Hello, hello. Welcome to the Introvert Social Hour. My name is Kayvana, and today we are talking about creative procrastination. I have a lot of discussion, a lot of talk, and I am so excited to bring on my friend Nicole. We've talked about something similar before. We've talked about our creative processes specifically, but I wanted to dive in and specifically talk about creative procrastination and what that looks like for us, what that has looked like for us, what have we done maybe to change those things, et cetera, et cetera. So welcome back, Nicole, to the podcast. Woot woot.
Ooh, thanks for having me.
Of course, of course. I first wanted to go in and talk about the idea of like people are probably looking. And one, I just want to say, Nicole gave me the name idea. Let me first say that, yes, because I had a different phrasing for it. And Nicole was like creative procrastination. I was like, wait, yes, that exactly. So I am curious. I do want us to talk about this because people are probably also wondering the same thing. Um, what does creative procrastination mean to you? And then we're going to talk further about why this is important to discuss as well.
Yeah, I mean, when you were first talking about this idea for this episode, I feel like creative procrastination can cover a lot of things. There's like a bunch of different modes, and it can be really different depending on your medium too. Like, I feel like even something like writer's block can kind of fall into a certain kind of creative procrastination, a very like extreme form when you're like kind of overwhelmed and like to a point of breakdown. But definitely like creative procrastination is like on the route there, because usually, you know, like regular like standard procrastination, you're not doing it actively because you are lazy or don't feel like it. Like usually procrastination of all kinds is kind of hinting at something else going on under the surface that's like there's a reason that I can't really get to this in the way that I feel like I should right now. And sometimes feeling like you should is exactly the thing that's standing in your way. So, just kind of anything in my mind that like makes the creativity not happen.
Yeah, I was going to add on to that because it's very true. There's certain procrastinations that happen even where it's like you're procrastinating on stuff that you know you like to do. And that's even like something. And I know people would be like, hey, you might need to check. Maybe you got ADHD or something. I'm like, hey, listen, we'll get there when we get there. But that is so true. For me, what I've experienced is there's a creative procrastination that's happening out of possible fear of what will come of it afterwards, whatever that may be, because it depends on the creative journey you're on. In my specific case, it's like dance. It's like, okay, I could make some choreography and I could post it, but I'm like, oh my gosh, what if people don't like it? And it's like, okay, we got to let go of that idea. Or it's like, what if it's not, what if it doesn't really make any noise? What if it's like crickets when it's posted or something like that? But I think that's the whole point of like creativity. It doesn't need to be perfect. You just need to do it. And I think that's something I am unlearning, even though it's like it's a process. We've talked about this, like creative processes and stuff. But that's what it is to me. It's like there's the fear is a big one that I see as a reason for that procrastination, or doubt even. Yeah, that's a big one. In regards to importance, in the topic for right now, I think it's important to talk about because I wish someone was there earlier to be like, girl, shut up and just do it. Like, don't let yourself get stuck, because that's exactly what it is. It's like that procrastination does hold you back, and it adds more time onto the time that, you're already kind of losing. And so I think it's important to talk about and to say what we've experienced and what we're learning, because maybe someone out there who's also possibly experiencing it, maybe even younger, could be like, okay, let me lock in, let me not do those things. It's so funny because we're not even 30 yet, but I'm like, wise words from our late 20s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a phrase that
Oh
I
yeah,
think
go
of
ahead.
sometimes is like the time is gonna pass anyway. So, if you're sitting there twiddling your thumbs going like, well, maybe I should wait a little bit until it like the time feels right, or like whatever excuses are coming up for why now is not the right time. I mean, like in 6 months or whatever, when you imagined might be a better time, like so many things could have happened since then, and then 6 months have passed. So just like you said, like, the time is going to pass anyway. So if you're coming up with all these excuses to not do it now, like, those excuses, a lot of them will still be true in 6 months or a year.
100%. And that's literally like all this time happened and I could have been did that. Or I could have been done that was time, unfortunately, wasted, but it's lesson learned for sure. Um I am curious, because like I said, it could be a confusing period of knowing what procrastination is. It procrastinating or is it something else? Have you ever mistaken procrastination for that being a part of your process? Like you maybe sit and thought too long about something. I'm curious of what that looks like for you as a writer.
Yeah, I've definitely seen that. I think, kind of looking back on it now, the one that is most like obvious to me in retrospect is like, I was kind of in what I refer to as like editing hell. Like, I was it had a novel that I had written, and I would go back and edit it, and I would send it to people and get their opinions and edit it again, and like just on this like endless loop of editing. And a lot of good things did come of it, but I did get to a point where I was like, I just kept doing it because didn't want to move on to the next step, which is like figuring out where to go from there. And so then I was like getting notes from people that were like contradicting each other. Like, person A would say like, "Oh, I think you should change this or add more of this," and then the next person who read it would be like, "There's too much of this. Can you get rid of that? It's, getting confusing." And like, I kind of got to this point of like almost a breaking point where I was like, at this point I'm taking advice from people who don't seem to know know as much as I do about some things in like the creative process, and also don't care about this project as much as I do. So why am I listening to these people? So it's a it that was kind of an interesting point in the creative journey to be like, okay, I need to like reassess. And believe it or not, I've done another edit since then, but that was a lot more like productive, as far as like, then I was doing the review and like, what do I want to change and improve here? What is not working for me? Because at the end of the day, like, this is my project. Like, I'm going to be the one that, in the imaginary scenario about like reception and what people are going to think, like, I'm going to be the one that's like defending my choices essentially. So it needs to be something that I feel good about, was kind of where I came back around to in like after I took a break and was like, let me work on something else for a bit so I can not think about this.
Okay, and I want to talk about that too. I'm mentally write that down because I'm about to talk about something else. But going on to other projects and what that looks like too. What I was going to say was, brain, get back. That happened in a jump. Um, I was curious about, now that you've gotten to that space where you're like, nah, this is mine. Like, okay, we're moving on. When do you know, now that you're in your own editing space, when do you know it's time to get it out there in the world? Because that is the next step. Not it's out to your creative processes, but whatever that next step is, if you want to break it down to people in the audience, like, of getting it out there to the next goal, like querying and stuff like that. If you want to explain a bit further, when do you know that that is the time? Or is that another form of like another step of potential procrastination? Because I think about that too in regards to like dance. Okay, I have an idea. The idea just be sitting up in there, and then finally that's a push in itself to finally that's a creative procrastination step in itself to finally get to the actual putting that idea into something. And then once that happens, then it's like, okay, now the idea has to then go to somewhere. It can't just sit on my phone. So I'm curious of when you know that step is, or what, if you know at all, or you're figuring that out. Yeah.
I mean, like, you do and you don't. One thing that specifically for querying that a lot of like authors talk about, which for your listeners, if you're not familiar, for traditional publishing, one of the routes that you can take is you can send queries, cold queries, which are usually just like, you've not had contact with any of these literary agents before. You just either send them an email, or there's like a form that a lot of them use where you just tell them a little bit about the project, send them a sample, and if they're interested, they'll contact you and say, hey, send me more. So that's a query. And a big question for a lot of writers who haven't done querying before is like, is this project ready? Am I ready to go to this next step? And I will say for myself, the first time I ever like really got into querying was in 2022 or 2023, and the project wasn't ready at that point. I didn't know that, because usually the measure that people use is like, is it as good as you can make it? And so I was like, at that time, I was like, yeah, this is as good as I can make it. I'm not a professional in the same sense that, other people are. So this is as good as it's going to get. So I started sending it out. Did decently. There's, a lot of measures. The traditional querying process is kind of broken right now anyway, so it's a little difficult to kind of assess those things. But that was for this book in draft 3, and I'm now on draft 6. So there's definitely been evolution since then, and I learned so much from querying about how to think about my book, how the book like wasn't working based on some of the things that I was like putting together for the querying process. So it was very informative to do, and I don't think I would have evolved had I kept waiting. So sometimes you do end up doing those things prematurely, but that can also be a lesson in and of itself, where you're learning new things about your book. And then the book that I wrote after that definitely did not need as many edits or anything like that. It kind of like, I was talking about this with a writer friend of mine. I was like, that's my favorite child book. Like, it kind of sprung forth fully formed. There's only a couple things that I feel I need to go back and tweak. And that was really nice, because I had just done this whole like crazy process of really like breaking down what I thought the project was about. So there's, you don't really know, but also you kind of have to like get to a point where you're like, I'm gonna take the leap, and you're gonna learn something either way. So that's kind of a new perspective shift I'm trying to take, is like, even if things feel like, oh, that was premature, or like, oh, I waited too long for that was a setback, like, it's still all part of the process. Because you can have all your regrets, but you can't go back and change what you did in the past. So you can at least be like, well, it was a lesson.
Yeah, I was thinking that too. It's like I can always look back and think about what I didn't do, but what you do, it could always be like worked on. But at least people got to see that creative process, and so like I said, for me. I'm definitely in a creative procrastination in regards to getting things out of the head to like actual like form, like for your version of like pen to paper kind of thing of like it's like, okay, you have an idea, you have even an inkling of an idea, move it forward. I think about this book, Immortal Dark by Tika Skirma. When I went to her book talk, and she was like, I literally was sitting on the couch watching a movie, and I had this idea of like vampires and like academia, like, and she was like, it was just literally, and I wrote it down in my notes app, just kind of like those kind of two ideas was just kind of sitting around in my head. And then she acted on it. Whatever that time frame looked like, we didn't get necessarily an idea on that. I think it wasn't too. I think it was within 2 years at least of from thought to publishing, maybe question mark. I could be wrong about that. But I was just thinking like, yeah, they all start off as ideas about action, and now she's on book number 3 is coming out this year. So I love sitting in things like that where I tell myself like, go to creative events, because even if I'm not a writer, for example, I could learn something from that, even in my creative, procrastination process of things. I am curious of, you know, I talked a little bit about how fear makes it a bit different for me than regular procrastination. I am curious if you have any like add-ons, because I know you talked about it as well, of what that can mean. What does it feel like between creative procrastination and regular procrastination? Something as simple as, for whatever reason, I can't get these dishes done. um, which probably that in that case is really more so like I don't want to do it procrastination. um, but I'm curious of what other layers creative procrastination has over something more general, like not doing the dishes or maybe not reading a book or not doing the hobby that you love, even though it's there. I'm curious if you have any add-ons to that.
Oh yeah, definitely. Because I feel like when it comes to creative pursuits, the stakes feel so much higher because when you're putting out a piece of art, something that you like, went from your brainchild to like something that you can physically hold in your hand or a video that you have on your phone, especially for something like dance where it's like it's also you and your body usually doing the like choreography and showing it off. It is so personal. And for something like writing, it's very much like it's kind of like a piece of your soul or yourself that you've like taken out to like show to people. And so that's why the fear of the reception of that is so much stronger because if you don't do your dishes and it's like, what's going to happen with that? I'm going to have to do them tomorrow. But if I spend, you know, 6 months or a year on a project and then I'm sending it out, even if it's just to agents or sending it out to online friends and they don't like it, or I go back and forth on whether it's worse sometimes to send something to somebody and they don't like it or don't get it versus when somebody just doesn't engage with it. Like if you send something to somebody and then it's been months and you're like, are you ever going to read that? But okay, like you know, um, it it feels like a piece of you. So any sort of reception or lack of response, it feels almost like a personal attack, even though for the person reading, like rarely it is. It's just kind of like they're responding to, the art in front of them. But because it's like your baby, you're like, like it feels so much more personal. It's like if somebody was insulting like your child or like because you put your blood, sweat, and your tears into that, and it can be like weeks or months of your life that you spent on it. And for somebody to, it's so easy for people to write it off or to, you know, nitpick on things when it's like, well, that's also one of my takes. Like sometimes I'm like, well, if you've never finished a book, I don't know how much of your advice I'm gonna take because it's really hard. After you've done it, it's like, yeah, I've done that, whatever. But like, there are plenty of people I talk about with some of my online friends. Like, there's Reddit writing advice, and you can tell from the way that somebody's talking about writing them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you've never finished a book. You maybe tried, so you have all these thoughts about it. But if
Mm.
you haven't finished a book, I don't know if I want to take your advice of only show, never tell. I'm like, sometimes those rules are not universal, but treating them that way is holding you back.
Yeah. No, that is true. I think we've kind of talked about this before where I was like, I feel like I go into like different creative eras, but there was a period where I was like, oh, I think I kind of want to write, you know? And then I was like, this is hard. Okay. Like there's a reason I never moved past a page because I was just like, I I have ideas. I think where I would go is script writing instead, and that's a whole
Mm.
different ball game to learn. I think leave the books to y'all
I
because
think you'd be a great scriptwriter because you have great taste in movies and TV, so you'd be great
thank
at it.
you. Yeah, I think that's a next journey whenever I'm ready for sure. But I think that's where I would be okay with. But I'm like, there's so much respect as a reader too. Like, there's just so much respect I have when you read a good book. You're like, how did they think about that? Like I want to see they're bored. Like they when they were piecing things together at the world building, even like in romances, I'm like, ooh, that was something I didn't expect to happen. And you did this and that, and oh, that was a subtle nod to this. And it's just like just so cool. So no, I totally understand that perspective, but that's so true though. Um, in the dance world of things too, like you said, it's even a little bit more because it's more in your face, like literally actually people are visually seeing your body and movement. Most of the time it's online these days, unfortunately. Like and that's kind of the thing I've also had to like strive with. At first I was like really, it wasn't even procrastination. There was a point where I was like, I'm not posting on the internet because I shouldn't have to do that and I shouldn't need all these followers are a big thing, and we talked about that too. And even in writing, how many followers do you have, how much do you have, how much engagement do you have already for this book, or your what's your status. That's become a big thing in all creative processes, interestingly enough. But yeah, that was at first I was like no, and then now I'm in a place where I'm like, okay, I posted, but I have moments where I'm like, oh, I got something. And then I'll have something for a long time and I finally post it. Like there's something I was holding on to for like a month. It was here. And then I finally did it and I was like, I'm just gonna post it because it's gonna get stuck. But yes, no, that is very true. A lot of people also, because you're so up forward, um, a lot of people have a lot to say and they don't dance. Or they've never choreographed. And so they have opinions on that. That's happening all the time. Um, in especially now, side note, I don't we'll figure out when this podcast episode drops, but um what's currently happening is the cat's eye choreographer is like getting ate up. But I have my own opinions on like cat's eye in itself, so I'm like they're not wrong. But it's just an example of like you know, some people are definitely talking about it and don't have any experience in the dance world. For my experience in the dance world, I agree with what people are saying, which is good. But there's times where people will drop choreography online, and it's what is this? This is very like especially contemporary. A lot of people don't take contemporary seriously unless you're doing like kicks, flips, you know, kick to the face, uh, really high jump, calypso, you know, all this like when they look at contemporary, they think it's supposed to be tricks, and sometimes that's not really the basis of what contemporaries was. Not that there is a basis because it's still in development. The idea of it is like it's contemporary, it's new, it's in the works, it's a mixture of all of these other styles and stuff. But the fact that you expect that out of contemporary, so when you see someone not doing something so high technical and it seems very human, and people are like, "What are they doing?" Now I've had those experiences before where I've been like that, but I have some education to back that up. Where I'm like, she's walking in sand for 10 minutes, you know, like but like just it's important to have some understanding before. So I totally agree. Yeah. I
And
also think
also,
as someone who oh sorry, I'll finish this. As someone who also does comment on things that I don't have experience in, it is fair that, you know, I'll I acknowledge the hypocriticalness in that, but I think it's fair to at least understand the craft a little bit more versus just talking about it. Yeah.
yeah, and we've talked about this outside of podcasting before, but like the idea of being like an informed hater versus an uninformed hater. Um, and I think when it's like just you, me, and Sabrina like chit chatting on a Friday evening, we can talk whatever smack we want to because it's just like, you know, that's our opinion. But to go online and then post these things where you know the creator is going to see it, like you're posting it on their video so they can see it, to kind of post this kind of like, you know, kind of snarky, hateful thing just to have a hot take and get some upvotes from other haters, like, who's that helping? That's not even going to really make you feel good at the end of the day. So what's the point?
100%. I think that's also just a separate conversation. People love to hate on the internet. That could be a whole episode on its own of just like
Best engagement there is hating.
literally like they wait for one person to do something wrong, even a little inkling. It doesn't have to even be super wrong. um I think there's little grace for like lack of knowledge sometimes. Like you should know, now you know. But then people really, they pile heavy. Like it goes from 0 to 100 really quick sometimes. It's internet is I want to know if anyone's done social studies on that. As a psychology girl, I would love to know more. There probably are some studies on that at this point. But yes, I just thought about that, throwing myself off the topic. um I am curious. I know you had mentioned it a little bit earlier. Like, you know, when you're procrastinating, there are things happening in your life that are, they're a reflection of, you know, that procrastination. What are there times that you notice you're procrastinating more? Like, for example, I feel like for me, it's probably when I'm like in a a mini existential crisis about what the heck I'm doing. And then I also have moments where I'm like, well, maybe this isn't it. Maybe I'm not good enough for it, and other things like that. And that's a whole other episode we've talked about before last season. For people listening, go check that out. But I think those are usually the situations there, like when I'm having um, career, just in general, career stuff. So if my job is really like irking my spirit, I don't know why, like instead of diving into dance further, sometimes I just kind of I'm like, oh, I'm stuck here. I don't know what to do. Dance isn't working out right now, kind of thing. And so that's where I end up. I'm curious, what does those situations look like for you?
Um, well, I think you're right. Where like I think kind of going back to what we were saying before about how it is so personal. So many other things in your life can affect it because it all has to do with like your personal confidence in yourself, especially for art. Like you have to be your first like believer and your first hype man, and you know, so if you're having a crisis in other places, you're not going to have extra confidence to be like, well, at least I can go do this. Like, it's more likely, you're going to have that breakdown in a lot of places if you're like, oh, if, things aren't going right in my career, and, but I thought, 3 months ago that I was, the shit. What if there are other things that I'm like too big for my britches about? Or, maybe, and it's easy to just kind of get in that, like, woe is me, like everything sucks right now. And I think that's human. And I think being a little, so we can be, especially as creatives, a little too hard on ourselves sometimes to be like, well, I should be immune to those things. But it's like, that's part of being a person. Like your emotions do affect you, especially when you do something creative. Like emotion is such a huge part of it. So if you're doing like dance, you're always like emoting. There's always like some like feeling that you're trying to impart. And the same thing with writing. Like that's how you connect with people, is by like engaging in the emotions. So if you're having an emotional crisis, of course you're going to have a creative crisis. And that is like one of the first ways to lead to procrastination, because you're like, well, I mean, it's always going to be easier to think about something as the sketch that you have in your mind rather than putting something on the page where it's going to be, all that potential that you're thinking of in your head. It's never going to be that on your first draft when you put it down to paper, or your first attempt of trying to figure out the choreography. So it's really easy at that stage to be like, it's never going to work. It was a bad idea. I should just give up on it. Let me throw it away. So yeah, it's very, because creativity is a part of your life is going to affect your creativity.
No, yeah. I like the emphasis on emotional connection there. Because that's true. I think, in similarity, in the in slash also opposite effect, I think sometimes I can also get really excited or really what's the word I'm looking for? Inspired. And then I'll be like, okay. And then I'm like, that's when the ideas start running. And then the next step is, the actual doing part. But I think that happens sometimes too, where um, those emotional moments, maybe like I go see a Broadway show I really love, and I'm like, that was really good. I want to get there. I want to do that. That's really cool. And then maybe I'm looking for auditions or things like that. I'm kind of getting my head back in the game on what I'm supposed to be doing. Um, so yes, I definitely agree with that emotional connection, and that's so true. They go hand in hand together. Do you think there is a time where that procrastination could possibly help in ways? Like, do you feel like sometimes you actually do sit and pause and give yourself some time to process and think? Does it feel like a reset sometimes, or does it always feel like something that's kind of hindering you?
Um, I have kind of an interesting take on this. I think there are some things that can feel like procrastination. Like a lot of, at least in the writing world, a lot of people view like taking a break from writing. If you're one of those people that's like, oh, I want to write, this almost every day, or I want to do, like, you have certain routines that you do, making a conscious decision to like take a break and step back for a second can feel like giving up, or like, you know, do like, oh, I'm just procrastinating, like I'm not like doing the right thing here. But a lot of times, like that, just because there isn't necessarily movement in the way that you have been moving in the past, that doesn't necessarily mean it's procrastinating. I like to, because I've definitely like had those moments where I'm like, if I sit down and try and like force myself to write more right now, it's not going to go, or I'm going to come up with something that is not going to be what I'm like really trying to go for. And that's just going to like make me feel worse about everything. So let me sit back and like rethink. And then I might go for a different project, or I might go and do like feed my creative beast and like go take in some more art that's like going to be inspiring to me and like fill up my well. So I'm like, first of all, art is beautiful, and life is amazing, and I can do this. And especially like for me, a lot of times I'm really into things like books and TV shows and movies that are a bit more niche, and they're not for everybody. And so that can really help me as well if I'm like, oh my god, like nobody's gonna like get my stuff, when you get very like I think sometimes it can be a little self-centered when you're like, nobody understands me as a creative, but kind of going to those shows where it's not for everybody, but it's for me, can really help with those things too. So like it can at first feel like procrastinating when you're not like doing the actual project, but sometimes that's what you really need to kind of like revamp your, mindset or your skills or other things to like help you when you do come back to doing the actual like active creative work. It's less of a, struggle and a pain.
Yeah, that is true. I'm like sitting, I'm like, I was like reflecting on, me talking about like Broadway shows, but also like, for me, even like dance shows, these things be expensive, but when I could go, I got a free Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater ticket in December, and I was like, I know, but I love when I got people who know, and they'll be like, hey, I got a ticket, thank you very much. So being able to just see that in person too is really cool, and even being just spaces, I'm like, wow, like y'all are just really just doing things that some of them been there for 20 plus years, um and it's so funny because it's so annoying. We've talked about this too. Even being in those spaces and still being like, getting into those procrastination moments. Sometimes what I've experienced is being in creative processes can sometimes also lead to that creative procrastination. Um, and connecting back to when I was talking about career, sometimes when life is not life, and sometimes when I'm in a creative process and I'm questioning things, and so that's when I feel like sometimes maybe it's helpful because it's a step back. It's like going back to the drawing board for a second and resetting with myself. Because I remember going through a process, you know, with Ailey, and there was a period where I was like questioning a lot for me, just because I was that was just me. It was a me thing. I was just looking around. I was like, this is something new. Can I provide what they are asking, of me? Am I doing what they want? Am I taking the notes in, or am I overthinking it? And then I take that and then I go to my own drawing boards of like, okay, that's on pause right now. I I need to what's going on here? So then I'm not doing anything for my own creative processes and dance choreography wise, because I'm just sitting with those moments. So I feel like those are times where, yes, they are creative procrastination, but they are for a purpose. Sometimes it's needed, even though it's not intended. Sometimes it's just like I need that pause. Um, but yeah, I would say that's my experience with that so far. hmm in regards to, I guess I'm curious to the stepping away process. Were there points where, example, like for when you're putting yourself out there more, do you feel like those step away processes are more recurring, I guess? Because I feel like for me, sometimes I have waves of like, I've put myself out there, I've done this, I've done that. Okay, I'm taking a pause. You sometimes, like you said, there's no response, especially in the audition world of things. Like sometimes there's just no response for things, especially for creative, like sending out your work. Sometimes there's no response in those emails. Do you sometimes like sit and you're like, okay, we're just gonna reestablish? Or is it a direct creative procrastination, or is it also something that is more, um I guess it'd be like direct versus unintentional, I guess is the word I'm looking for, and I think so. If you catch my drifty.
Yeah, I think the intention part of it is really important because, like, you can accidentally find yourself in a writer's block where you're like, oh, I haven't thought about it because it's been a little bit stressful to think about, but I haven't worked on this project for 6 months or something. Like, I have a friend of mine who literally was like, because she's dealing with a bit of coming back to some certain kinds of writing when she's been focusing on other things recently. And she was at a point where she was like, I am stressed out even thinking about this project. So my homework, because we meet pretty regularly just to like catch up and be like, so where are you at with your projects and stuff like that. And so the homework, sometimes we'll give ourselves like, oh, by the next time we meet, I want to X, Y, or Z. And she was like, I want to be more comfortable just thinking about it, because even being like, it's not even to the point of like, what's the next sentence I'm going to write? Even being like, thinking about the project at all was so stressful for her, because she was like, she wanted to do certain things with it. It was kind of a struggle. So, like, kind of breaking things down to a point where it is a bit more accessible to you. I think that, like, as long as you're being intentional about it and like really stopping and thinking, like, what is causing this blockage here? And a lot of times it's like, it's easy to be like, oh, I'm just lazy, I'm not good enough, I'm all these things. But it's like, no, let's take a bit more like, gentle approach to this, where you're like, well, what is going on? Why am I stressed out about this? Why is this so hard right now? And a lot of times, like, that can lead you to kind of an alternative where you're still kind of able to make some progress, even if it's not the active, like, I'm putting words on the page. Like, I spent the first 2.5 months of this year, it was a bit of a trend on TikTok, you might have seen it, but doing a personal curriculum where I was just like watching a bunch of videos about like writing craft and like different aspects of writing a book, and kind of going back to basics and seeing like, you know so I'm still doing something creative and I'm still thinking about this project, but I'm not putting that pressure on myself where I have to be actively like creating, like putting words on into the draft. So by the time like this month, what I've undertaken is like, I did all that prep work and now I'm coming back to the project and being like, okay, now let's actually do it. And it's been going really well so far, because I was able to be gentle with myself and be like, let's not force this. Let's roll it back a little bit. Let's, in a way, you could think of it as procrastination because you're not actively doing the project, but I prefer in those moments, what it helps me more to think of it as like, I'm preparing for the next thing rather than like, I'm letting myself down. You're not. You're putting more tools in your tool belt to make that next step more possible, because you tried to do it without those tools and it was really hard.
I like that perspective, and that goes into what I'm about to ask next. I have to side note, there was an angry driver ad. So hilarious. I was like, I gotta address it because they could hear it. Just skirting around. Like, first of all, we get it. Like, you're safe driving, please. um, I just thought that was funny because first it was like the hunking, and then you just hear skirting in the back. In regard, because so you're talking about like ways that you get out of it. You kind of get unstuck, and it doesn't have to mean jumping directly into, that project. It could be literally just giving love to your craft. And so I am curious if you found a balance with that of like, oh, I'm getting into like a procrastination, moment, stopping it before it starts. Like having a proper balance with your creativity. Because I feel like for me, I've gotten better at it. Because when I got into like slumpy slumps, I was in slumpy slumps for like months. And sometimes it was like I wasn't even in dance class like often. I was in dance class maybe even like once a month. Like it was bad. I was not consistent whatsoever. Um, but now I think, especially within the last 2 years, it's been like, even if, I don't have it, mentally up here, like, what those next steps are, what those choreography moments are, I'm still in class. So for me, my creative balance is no matter what, I'm in class at least once a week. Um, at least once a week. That guarantees me 4 classes a month. Could it be more? Yes, but also classes are getting more expensive. And then another balance has been I at least do one performance workshop. That also just I'm not just in class, but I'm also challenging my dance learning skills, my choreography challenges, understanding the choreographer, and then also like the performance skills on stage. It also challenges me to just like work as a team with people as well, because especially as an introvert, one, but then two, as someone who is in their questioning process, sometimes it could be a very solo experience. So sometimes just yeeting yourself out there no matter what helps. So I'm curious of, you've talked about, you know talking with people and catching up and talking about what your creative process looks like and what any updates. And I know you've talked about challenges that pop up. Do you have any, like, if I were to ask you right now, do you have any plans forward? If I was like, what's your plan in September? You're like, I know for a fact I have this and this because I have this going at all times. I'm curious of if there's anything you've already pre-set up for yourself to make sure you don't fall out of like the lock-in mode or fall into that procrastination solidly. Yeah.
Yeah, you'd mentioned a couple things that I think are also applicable to the writing world, like uh, you're always in class. I feel like one thing that I've been embracing more is like study. So that can be like just reading a good book, and instead of just being like, that was a good book, like sitting back and thinking, what did I really
Mm.
like about that? What are some things that I want to take away to my work? You know, and
Yeah.
actually a different writer friend of mine that I know in person, we were talking about like reading outside your genre. So, even if you're writing, like I tend to write YA fantasy, I, a book that really like sparked my creativity and like got me into like reading in general again was we talked about this recently on The Silence of the Lambs, which is a crime thriller novel. But a lot of the like techniques that are used in the process of writing it are things that are applicable to all genres. So it can be very like engaging in that way to make you think about something a different way. You can of course take writing classes, whether in person or online. That's a great way to like kind of force you to engage with something in a new way as well. And you can also like kind of engage in that teamwork that you're talking about, where you're working with other people, whether that's reading somebody else's work and giving them notes on that, or taking notes from other people. um, Seeing how you feel about them, and you can do that in classes as well. And then at least one thing that I think has very been very solid for me, that is helpful for like preventing me from getting stuck, is having a lot of projects that I can go to. So if project A, I'm really stuck on something and I'm like, ugh, like I know I need to sit back and do some study to help me prepare for that, or even just take a break to like let let my ideas cook a little bit before I can like come back to it and really like get it the way that I want to get it. If I have a project that I can work on the side, so I'm still like doing something, that's really helpful for me, especially if that secondary project is something that is more fun and less like serious, and like so it takes the pressure off. I've even done things like, you know, this is a totally non-canon. I'm just going to write a little bit of something about these characters that isn't going to go anywhere. This is just for me. So I can have a little bit of fun, engage with the world, think about the characters, but not feel like, oh no, this is high stakes. This is like actually going to go in the book. If I do it wrong, it's going to be bad. Like, it takes some of that pressure off. And then you can really like discover things about what the main project is by doing those sort of things, or just by working on something totally different, just to get out of that headspace, to give yourself some space from that project. So there's a lot of different techniques I've used, because it I it's really easy for me to, if I like I'm kind of like a shark, if I stop moving I die with the writing. So I always have to be working on something, otherwise it's a lot easier for me to be like, oh my god, like everything I read is terrible, and those sort of things. Another one for your tool belt of like staying creatively engaged without necessarily having to write, rereading your old stuff. A lot of writers I have talked to their experience is that, like, while they're writing it or soon after they finish it, they're like, oh my God, it's so terrible. But after 6 months or a year, you come back to it and you're like, oh my God, this is really funny. Like, that's usually my experience, is I'm like, I'm laughing at my own jokes and I'm like, you know what? I cooked with that. That's okay. I'm okay.
Like, I'm doing good.
Yeah. If I can
Yeah.
laugh and I know the book.
Right. You're like, I remember that. Yeah. Even in similarity, I would say going back to your old stuff, if you're doubting your now, go back to your then and you're like, oh, I know I'm doing better now. That's another a good way to like hype yourself up a bit. Cause I'll look back at my old like dance stuff sometimes and I'm like, oof. I was like, I would do better with that. I actually am considering, once again, all up here, just hasn't exited out. But like when I was in my, when my push it out era of like content, like 2020, I was like, I'm still gonna dance, even though I can't really go anywhere right now. I was dancing at home and I did like a creative challenge. And I'm like, 6 years later, I know I could do that choreography better. Like certain things I looked at and I was like, that I could do that way better than then. And so things that I've thought about for sure. Because that having that idea is like, wait, so then you've made progress. Like you're not exactly you're doing better than you think you are for sure. Um, I did want to, so we kind of talked about this a little bit of like, what those steps are. Um, if we were to just talk to directly to someone, it with like a short span of advice, what would you say to someone who is, starting to create again after a long pause of procrastination? What would be like that one or two notes of just make sure you do this and that?
I think the number one is like, be nice to yourself, both in the like, you're coming back to this after a break or after a crisis of confidence or anything like that. Like, so the fact that you're doing it after, a setback or a struggle to get there, that's already a huge win that you're doing it in the first place. And then second is just have fun with it. If something like, that's usually my path to, like, if I'm stuck because something feels like too high stakes or like I'm not going to do it right, break it down until it is something as fun as possible. So for your first project, don't go back to that, entire novel that you think is going to be the next great American novel, as long as if only you could do it right. Start with something silly and fun that is just for you. Like one of my writer friends, we talked about doing an inventory of like all the stuff that, like, when you go to other projects or like when you're watching shows or reading books or anything like that, if there's any sort of like topics where you're like, that is for me, I know I'm gonna like a show that's gonna have X, Y, and Z in it. Make a list of those things and try writing something that is just as many of those fun things that you love as possible. Make it fun.
That is true. I was going to say something similar in regards to like, it's the creative process. It's something you enjoy. Like it was something that you started off enjoying. So getting back to it, forget about the pressures of it, like enjoy it. So very similar case scenarios of I'm getting back into dance, for example. Not me, but that's an example. Thankfully I don't have to do that right now. I'm very proud of myself. I've been doing stuff. But if someone's coming back into dance, and I've talked to people who have been doing that, recently, just come back and enjoy it. Low pressure, low stakes, you're not, no one's dancing for Beyonce right now. So it's like, that's the goal of just coming in to enjoy it. And yes, challenge yourself, of course, but it's okay. Nothing's going to happen overnight or over a week or over a month. Like creative journeys are really, all of them take time. And nothing, I'm a truly believer in, there's nothing, we strive for this like idea of perfection, but that doesn't exist. No matter how perfect you think something is, there's going to be somebody coming from somewhere being like, this is trash. Like, no, you can't please everybody. So it's like, do what you want, because you can't, you're not going to please everyone, so you might as well just do it. um and I think I need to sit with that more, of just like, just doing it, just do it, YOLO. But I really do think that that is the goal there. And for people who are, you know, kind of trying to, feeling stuck a bit, you know, that's that process of just kind of just doing it and jumping into it. Not letting yourself fully fall off as well. If you are currently stuck and you haven't fully fallen off yet, catch yourself before that fully happens. And if that just means, signing up for a writing class, or, opening a book that you think will be something that really, changes the trajectory of where you are. I think that that's also really important. In the dance world, I know, literally just taking a class, watching videos sometimes helps too, like diving into stuff, even if you can't go see a dance show, that helps too. So it's a journey. We've talked about this in Crisis in Confidence. It's like nothing is ever solidified. You could be on your best A game for months, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, you're like, "What the heck is going on?" So, I would definitely say that for sure, for sure. But hopefully, y'all took something with this. Um, it's creative procrastination is real. Like, and there's so many layers, as Nicole and I've talked about. It's like the emotional connections and the fear, whether the joy that having positive effect, things like that. And sometimes um intentionally sitting with yourself requires pause too, but just not letting yourself fully fall off. So if that means you're not necessarily diving into something, still have it be a part of your life and your journey. Don't let it fully take you away from it. Yeah, I think that's important as well. Nicole, do you have any last thoughts before we start wrapping up?
I think I may have said this before in our previous talks about creativity, but my core philosophy about things creative, especially writing, is that just like in Ratatouille, anybody can cook. So, if you are like, have gotten to this place where you're like, no, I can't, like, that's the old me, I can't do it anymore. Yes, you can. Believe in yourself. You've got a story in you. You just got to create the right environment for it to feel safe to come out. So,
yeah, I like that. Anyone can cook. Yeah. Just say that. Just say that all the time, and it applies to everything.
Yeah,
that's some
true. Great writing. Ratatouille.
Ratatouille. And I don't know. Side note, if you have heard of the Ratatouille musical. But that's my brain is starting to sing the song. That's what happened there, because there's a song called "Anyone Could Cook."
Amazing.
But yeah, go ahead and listen to that. Maybe that could be your motivational anthem.
Mm-hmm.
That's hilarious. But no, that's also very true. But thank you for listening. Please share any of your thoughts that you have on, creative procrastination, and any tips and tricks. Like you said, it's a journey. I'm still learning too. But I think I'm definitely in a better place than I was like 2 years ago, for example. So that's really important. But make sure you stay caught up. Catch up on all the episodes. Go back to the episodes with Nicole and I where we talk about, our creative processes and our confidence journeys and stuff in our, in our art, and then make sure you check the description, catch Nicole's information in the description, see what Nicole's doing, and make sure you also get some sunshine, get some air, have an amazing week. And I will see you next week on the Introvert Social Hour. Bye.